Okay, we're back and we're going to now start to fine-tune a few of these subtle differences so that we have like 99.9% exact replica. And when I say 99.9, the main difference is that Ultimatum is going to have a one additional grid breakpoint, which is at that 1200 pix. But outside of that, everything is going to be identical. So the first thing, which will make a huge difference, and I'd like to start off with, is getting our fonts to match. So that way our everything related to the line height and just the overall look and feel is going to make a drastic change. So the first thing I want to do is go back and look at our export, and if we look at the HTML from our Webflow export, we can see that we're loading in some web fonts here through a script. Well, Ultimatum automatically loads web fonts for us, so we can just identify the fonts right here. We're seeing that it's Montserrat, a couple different weights, as well as Bitter with a few different weights. So what we can do is actually just go to Google Fonts and grab one line of code that will include that into our child theme. So what we'll do is we'll come in over here, type in Montserrat, there it is, add that to our collection. Let's go ahead and type in Bitter, there it is, add to collection. We can just choose to use those two fonts. We'll select all the additional weights, and we'll come over here to the @import rule, grab that piece of code, and we don't need that anymore. And we can go back to our master CSS, since we're going to use these fonts probably throughout our entire theme. Let's just go ahead and include that into the master, and we'll go ahead and save that, and let's refresh our child theme. We can immediately see a difference. Look at that, much cleaner and looking a lot like our slate template. So a few things. So right off the bat, I can see that we have some alignment issues here. So if I look at the title here, so this is up at the top. This is going to be easy. Let's use our Chrome inspection tool, and we're going to see that this image is 25 pixels by 25, so that's the height and width. So what we want to do is go to our app name, which says, there's our text there that says font, and I think we can just simply do line height 25 pix, and boom, look at that. Now we're lined up nice and even. So what we'll do is we'll copy this, and this is in our home.css, line 145 is where that tells us to find it. So let's go to our home CSS, line 145, app name. We'll go ahead and add that rule. And I like to put these little notes in here. That way, if I go back to Webflow and I continue to modify my design and then later export it again, I can actually go in and find all of these edits that I changed to my original Webflow export. I can set those aside somewhere in a file, and then I can export the new Webflow, paste that in, and overwrite all the CSS. And then I can grab my custom rules, go in and throw them in one by one, refresh my design, and then the only thing I really need to work with is any of the additional changes may need some minor modifications. But this at least allows me to make it an easy process to do that. So we'll go ahead and save that, and we should be able to refresh and just confirm that that does retain our modifications. So that's good. The next thing I noticed is we have some underline or what we call text decorations on these. Same thing here, as well as with the color. So notice that there. And over here we don't have any decorations on these, and the color does not change. So those have the underline, but those will probably be associated with its unique property, so I'm not concerned with that. So let's go ahead and go to the top of our document, and I'm just going to put it right after the paragraph. What we're going to do is, for our anchors, we're going to say for the normal state as well as the hovered state, text decoration is none. I've added my little note there, and the same thing with the for the hover state. We're going to make sure reset the color just to white, and we'll hit save. We'll refresh, and looking good there. Our button looks good, and that looks good. Alright, so we need to override this color here. And what we can do is see that this is the footer link, and it uses a light purple color is defined. I can choose these, enable the hover state, and notice that it essentially locks in that state for that particular element. And I can see all we're doing with it is changing the border. So by adding that previous rule, resetting it to white, it's showing up. So if we add a rule in here that just says color purple, boom, that should be all we need to do. So that's the footer dash link hover. That is located in Home CSS, line 295. So we'll go ahead and put that code in there. So we'll scroll down to 295. Footer link hover. Let's go ahead and add that rule with our little note. Hit save. Refresh the page. And just to confirm on our slate template, yeah, we're not changing the color on that at all. So we'll come in down here, and sure enough, we're good to go on that one. Okay, another thing I noticed is that there's this we're missing some borders on some of these elements. If I look at the slate template, we can see that there's these light borders, and I believe those are applied to the section classes. Let's go ahead and take a look. So if I section gray, we can see, yeah, border bottom. But it looks like Ultimatum with our wrapper has, you know, one of the options within the layout is to be able to go in and specify borders. So I think what's happening is those are essentially, since we haven't defined anything there, it's turning them off with the default styles. So what we need to do is override those, and we probably just need to simply come in here and apply important. And I use that sparingly, but that looks like it fixed what we needed to do. So that's located on line 116 in Home CSS. So we'll just go ahead and copy that. Go up to line 116. There's our section, and this is the rule that we want to apply important to. Hit save, refresh, and there's our borders. Alright, that's great. Alright, the next thing that I noticed, everything in this section looks good. You know, there's going to be a little bit of difference, of course, because we don't have that 1200 pix. So obviously these are going to be a little bit closer, whereas with our 1200 pixel widescreen, we're wider. And so I think that's why we're seeing this issue here too, is because this is a you know, a heading or a block paragraph, and it's not a block level, it's an inline item. So this column that this fits in is not force wrapping the image yet. I'm sure that'll happen if we make the page smaller. Let's see. Well, you know what we can do is just simply apply a display inline, and I bet that will fix that problem. So let's just go ahead and, so we can see icon title, or I'm sorry, display block. That's what I meant to say. And that forces it to wrap. So display block. Home CSS, line 216. So let's go ahead and look at that. Icon title, display block. And the reason I'm refreshing this is sometimes the Chrome inspector will show the changes, but then when you refresh, maybe there's not another condition that's affecting that. So we're just refreshing it to confirm that yes, it is in fact taking our changes and the result is desired. So just looking at this a little bit more. Got 3 more down there. Let's check that. Yep, those wrapped as well. It looks like we have some white space that's missing up here. I'll come back up. Looks like there's just a tad more white space. I can't emphasize anything more when it comes to the design aspect. That's probably the #1 thing that really kind of sets the a well-designed website aside from the norm, is using that white space. You know, sometimes that you've heard that saying, less is more. So let's go in here and find out what's going on with that. So we'll just use our inspection element on the original Webflow, and we can see that we have a column. And remember, I mentioned that organize row had that class, and we don't have a way of adding that class to it, but we can see with the orange area that's highlighted there, and over to the right we can see we have a margin top on the organize row of 36 pixels. So the way that we can add a margin to that row is by coming up here and targeting the section white that we've done with our wrapper. The only thing is that we have other sections in here that are using section and white, so it's not truly unique. So this would, if I just used that as the way of targeting the row, every row that has a section dot white would get the margin applied to it. So what we're going to do is, we can see that this section is the second row, and it is the organized like a boss, so we'll just use that for the naming convention. So back in our layout, we'll go to our second row here, and on the wrapper we'll go ahead and add a class and call it organize. So we have section.white.organize, and none of the other sections, or I should say wrapper elements, have the .organize class. So now we can come in here and where we had this organized row, margin top, 36 pixels. Right now that's not targeting anything because that doesn't exist. But we can just go ahead and get rid of this. Put a space. Actually, I just could have just done that. And of course we want to include our section.white.organize. So this is the wrapper, and then it's going to look for the child item with a .row and apply the margin top 36 pixels. And just to confirm, I think it does have a class of row, so that should work for us. And we'll go ahead and add our little note in there, save that, refresh, and that looks better. Now we can confirm that this row, and sure enough, there it is. There's our margin. So I move this out of the way. We can see if I turn that on and off, there's that white space. Much nicer. Alright, so I think that pretty much covers everything that I can visually see. If I've overlooked anything, let me know, and I will quickly update this. But so far, so good. It looks like we've literally have a 100% export, and we can create additional pages and then just create separate layouts for those individual pages using this same process. So let's go ahead and test the mobile function. So I like to use a tool called Screen Queries, and then I think this is beta, so I think it's still a free tool during the beta stages. Every now and then it gets a little finicky with loading the URLs. Okay, so we can already see the responsive functionality of our website. There is these gutters here that I think are applied to the body class. The cool thing about this tool is I can still use the dev tools to look at that, and it selected the body, and there it is right there. We can see that part of the Ultimatum included template adds a padding to the body in the 767 pix or lower. So we should be able to come in here, scroll down, and as a matter of fact, this is going to impact the entire site. So I'm going to use the master CSS, and we'll go ahead and just copy that, and we want to make sure that it falls within this media query. So we need to wrap this style in the media query. And obviously we need to just reset it to a unitless with no value. That's all. Let's see. Go ahead and refresh this, and it's gone. Alright, so it's looking good. One other thing I noticed is that the lack of padding. So we want to put a little bit of padding in there on those. So each of our columns, where the Ultimatum uses spans for the columns, and we can target all of the spans using this rule right here. So whether it's a span 6, span 2, span 4, span 8, we can use this right here to target all of them, and then we can say let's add 10 pix of padding, because I think that's what we have over here, and I think we have 10 pixels of padding on everything. Now they call it a row, so you have the section, container, and then row, and sure enough, inside the row, I believe got these negative margins. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me look at the columns. I think the columns is where we're defined. Yes. So in the columns we have a padding of 10 pixels right and left. So we can also do that in our master CSS. And we'll just go ahead and I'm going to throw that above our media. So what we've done is basically said any type of element, but most of the time it's going to be a div. So we could just say div as well, just to make sure that it only works for those particular spans that are defined. And then we have the padding right and padding left, giving it the additional 10 pixels that we desire. And we'll go back in and reset this. And sure enough, hey, there's the padding that we want. Everything flows nice and neat. Fully responsive website there. We are looking at our Ultimatum WordPress site. As you can see, it's still seeing me as logged in. There it is. How cool is that? Really, really responsive. It can get, yeah, I don't think we have any devices that are going to get quite that small. So I think 320 is normally the minimum I'll work down to. Anything past that, I'm not really too concerned about. They should know that it's not expected to work within the parameters under that. That's just my own opinion. Okay, so I think that wraps it up. Again, I'll provide the export of this child theme, which will include all of the edits that we made and the structure. You guys can use it for your own projects or just use it for reference. But ultimately, my workflow has improved immensely just by using the Webflow tool, and then this being able to export it using this method makes it really easy. So some things I would do next is probably go in and start changing out some of these text widgets for actually or actual dynamic widgets, and maybe some sliders. And then of course that requires a little bit more knowledge with PHP and JavaScript, but this can definitely show you how easy it is to get a Webflow export into a WordPress theme fairly quickly and easily. Thanks.